We're live. Hey.
All right. Welcome back to Dropping In at Pipeline Audio. And for the first time, I have a return guest, Phil Zeo.
Howdy.
There goes the echo because I didn't mute the actual YouTube channel.
Dude, okay. I did the same thing just now.
I was like, hey, who's that?
Yeah, I heard you twice.
Uh-oh. Okay, right, and cool. So your thing is the Zeo group, right? That's what you want people to be able to find.
Actually, I'm just okay with One Wall Studio. The Zeo group thing is just tangential for the time being. I work there, but you know, it's not my main goal in life. My main goal in life is the studio stuff and my YouTube channel.
So yeah, remind me that, and I'll put it in the. I gotta put everything in the descriptions like I'm supposed to, because I know I'm working on that.
Did you do that last time?
No, I was supposed to. I barely. I put a couple things in, then I forgot which where to put what. So I need to. Yeah, I need to do that.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind either way. I don't think you could be fired from this show. I have a hunch.
I'm in with the owner, I think. So maybe we're okay.
Hey, man, that's what it takes. You just got to know people.
Yeah. Speaking of, so that was today's thing. I was gonna. It's just something that just kills me every time it happens. And early on, when Justin was silly enough to make me a mod at the Reaper forum, this is one of the things that really just drove me nuts, is because noobs would come in and just be super upset that people, I mean, they weren't necessarily recording noobs. You know, we used to make the joke at the beginning that Reaper was the official DAW of the AARP because the age average was somewhere in the 40s or 50s. It was pretty crazy compared to, you know, the demographics we've seen and everything else. And
it's crazy because I'm so young and I started on Mixcraft, but once Reaper came out, I jumped on that.
And I was like 15. We had a lot of older guys that it just because it looked like the thing that they were used to, you know, and we got a lot of radar users right off the bat. So that was, you know, I'm sure that was a big part of it.
Yeah, that's true.
So they would come into our forum and like, hey, why are these guys talking to us like this? And for a lot of them, they weren't really used to using computers yet either. So they hadn't been exposed to forum culture and flame wars and all that stuff.
Flame wars and forum culture, the two go hand in hand.
Yeah, you know, even, you know, a lot of people don't even. I think even forums are becoming a thing where people don't remember what that is, but we still have them. So,
dude, message boards and forums, I mean, they're not quite Usenet level of obsolete, but like people are just forgetting they exist, and that makes me sad.
Oh yeah,
they're so helpful when they're actually helpful.
Yep, and so this is the kind of problem. So I guess I sum it up quickly in that. The best way I saw it was on Gear Sluts. There was a thread where a guy was asking, "Hey, how do the big guys use drum samples?" And immediately the entire conformist culture, whatever you want to call them on that, they all attacked him and said, "No, nobody ever uses samples." And hey, this is you got to get the drums right at the source. No, get another drummer. No, play this, play that. And the truth was that somebody else, one of the big guys that actually mattered, which is funny because they all look up to him, but you know, whatever, they think they know what he's going to say, but they didn't. He said, "Hey, this guy asked a technical question that requires a technical answer." And, and you know, don't assume that you know whatever it is that you're assuming.
That's actually what amazes me is I've seen that. Ever since you pointed it out, I've just been going through these forums that I'm a part of and these user groups on Facebook. And I've been going through these comment sections when people ask questions. And if people flame those people and are just like, "Oh, learn how to spell first, learn how to do whatever first," like they clearly don't know the answer to the question. But these people will come in who I'll recognize the name of, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's a person who actually has some clout to their name or like credits to their name," and they'll say something educated and helpful, and then all these other people will just think they're hot and they'll be like, "I have a real hot take on this one. I'm smart, I promise." It's crazy.
Yeah, and if they don't, like you say, it's one of those things. Like if you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know, or not say
Or
anything
just not
at all.
comment. Yeah.
But no, they got to put their 2 cents in. And so today, I don't. I've been really trying to make this show not anything like the way I normally behave. So I don't think I should read off the posts or anything like that. But for instance, today,
Yeah.
I might have to do a couple more lines on an audiobook. They forgot some credits,
Mhm.
and I was having trouble with the one of the voice actors who's actually not a professional. She was just asked to come in because she had a relationship to the person who wrote the book, and which is awesome to bring your friends or family in. And she talks quieter than she breathes.
Oh
And
no.
Yeah, and she breathes pretty quiet too. So I'm cranking my mic preamps up as loud as they can go, and
I
bringing
hate
up a
that.
lot of hits with it. And
Yeah, that's a source problem.
oh yeah, but okay, that it is a source problem. That's the truth. But this is also my problem. I'm not changing the source. I've got to fix this. So I asked, what's a much quieter mic preamp? And that's an actual quantifiable question. And I could go way long on how upset I am that actually the numbers are either hidden by the manufacturers most of the time or just not discussed. And I think that really says something about this culture that we don't even discuss what the actual numbers are. But
I mean, the best thing I can tell you is from experience. If you had just asked me like over the messenger or whatever, I probably would have just said millenniums, because in my experience, I've gotten really, really low level signals to sound crisp and clean without a lot of background noise at all. So that's like the only experience I have with a really quiet mic pre. But I saw the responses you got in the forum to that, and it was pretty funny. I mean, people were jumping on that question like it was there was no chance they'd ever have to leave another comment on a post again. It was crazy.
It's the nutty part is okay. So first of all, and I'm really bad about this, but ideally, you want to extend the principle of charity. Don't and I really hammered this one time. I forget, it was another technical question, but I even said to the guy, I said, don't project your inadequacies and your lack of knowledge onto me. Don't assume I'm you, because I was so upset at that point. But just assume that the person asking the question might be a professional. I know I posted a picture of one of my old mic pre-racks. I own everything that you've ever heard of. I mean, at least I did back in the day. And don't assume that, oh no, I'm in here using some crap interface. Nobody really reads the things before they post. But it turns out this is the Midas M32, and there was a pretty good test done on it. And turns out it's really not that much louder than the M100, I think, or the M101.
Really?
There's 2 or 3 decibels, and that's according to the marketing materials from Millennia, and they're usually going to exaggerate. But then again, the good companies are pretty conservative, so who knows? Maybe it is a lot better, but in this case, it's really not going to be by much. And that's the other thing. It's like they always say, "Oh, just change the source." Ha 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 ha. And you're like, well, guess what? I can't in this case.
Or use your ears.
Oh man. So the tropes, that's what I hate, is the tropes. These stupid, tired old cliches is like, use your ears. Like, oh no, I totally wouldn't have thought of that. Man, I'm so glad you reminded me that I have ears,
And here my volume was all the way down. I was just looking in waveforms. Golly, man, you just saved my life.
These people just drive me nuts. And when they do it to noobs, it's way worse. But I'd love, as soon as I really get this down, I really like what Ethan Weiner does, that he is really like the James Randi of audio, and he's mellow. I mean, he's not quite that mellow, but people annihilate him. They make pages just to cut him up. He used to always be in this fight with the Mixer Man, the Womb, and all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I've always more wanted to be the Christopher Hitchens of audio. If I get in
It's
trouble,
a very
it's fine.
specific comparison, I think.
Yeah, James Randi got along with everybody. Christopher
Yeah.
Hitchens, not so much. But
He's stepped on some toes.
yeah, but if you really think about the basic logical fallacies, and you treat questions and problems that you're having in audio through their lenses, things get a lot easier. I mean, people just believe the craziest magical nonsense, and so half the time you're going to get that. So somebody on that thread, I guess they had asked Sweetwater a ways before, like what's some good stuff for this, and of course the Sweetwater guy, what does he posts some back 4 examples of Neve 1073s.
Oh wow.
Like, there's this idea that these vintage devices are the best things that were ever made, and somehow we've lost the technology. It's like Atlantis sunk into the sea. We'll never be able to build these again, and they're made out of pixie dust, and they're powered by unicorn farts, and it just can't be created out of the unobtainium that we don't have.
I can tell you what, we still have tubes and we still have solid state circuits. So everything that we use to build those still around.
Yeah, and the schematics are there. It's not like it's a mystery.
Exactly. Build your own if you're so inclined, and you'll realize there's still stuff there that we still have the resources and materials.
Yeah, it's for, I think some people who know me for a while remember I had the Don't Get Jacked blog that was really about music industry marketing myths, and they drive me nuts. I mean, there's shock D stones and magical speaker cable lifter off the floors and the things that you can pay gajillions of dollars for, but a lot of the
cables.
Yeah, and a lot of the things. The problem is that so much of this stuff, it comes from people that we really trust. And I think, again, if you've been around me a long time, you know that a lot of the reason I do this stuff is because I'm trying to earn my penance or commit my penance, because I was brought up in that religion. I mean, I don't know any other word for it, but I was brought up in the big studios back in the day, and you absolutely had to have this magical matching pair mic that was made in the 40s or 50s, and nothing ever since is any good. And these Neve mic pre's that we had are the only thing that are okay. Sometimes it's okay to mix on the SSL, but really it'll destroy the sound for most of it.
An SSL will destroy the sound.
Yeah,
that's an accusation I've never heard flung at anyone.
Oh man, but yeah, back in the day, it was it's kind of okay to mix on the SSL, but never track through one, And now I see people saying, "Hey, we want that SSL sound." So it's
that's what I was just thinking. I learned on an SSL because I was fed that the SSL is the sound of records. If you want a record, you got to have the SSL.
Yeah, it's funny how that changes, but again, it's specifically the reason why, because nobody's actually running the numbers and comparing apples to apples, and so they're just walking around talking about nonsense. And the thing about human hearing is that it's so, okay, so especially when people are killing themselves. So I want this to sound just like a Marshall. I want to model this, model that. I'm like, do you know what does just a Marshall sound like? And I know people are going to like this comparison, but guitar sounds, amplifier sounds, whatever signal chain sounds, they're like girls. I mean, they never look the same way twice, ever. They never feel the same way twice. They never act the same way twice. It's a moving target, so.
Yeah. And I say this as somebody who is coming from a world where I'm addicted to tones and I love amps, and I can usually name an amp that was used on a record. But I've had times where people have come up to me and they've played their like custom guitar through an amp, and they'll say, "Hey, what amp do you think I'm using?" And I'll get it wrong, because it comes down to more than just the amp itself. It comes more down to the player and the instrument they're using. Like a pickup is going to radically affect a tone more than most people give it credit for.
Oh yeah, where the pickup is.
Yeah, I mean, if you got it on your neck, it's going to sound way different than the bridge, no matter what amp you're playing through.
Yeah, and again, like it's oh man, amplifier, like move the mic a millimeter that's on your amp, and you've just changed the tone so much. So what is this? And then acting just like with mic preamps, acting like it's made out of this unobtainium that you'll never get again. So I get in a lot of trouble, and because to me the best kryptonite out there, and especially against myself, like I'm serious that I was brought up in this religion where we had to have this specific gear, specific people doing specific mods, and then I was forcing anybody who would ask me that wanted to build their own stuff, I was forcing them to buy this junk, or I was telling them they had to, or else it was a joke. And I had, the worst part is that I'm sitting in a tech room full of test equipment, and I can test stuff all day long, and yet somehow I don't believe the test results, or I'm taught that those test results don't matter. Even if it says that the Neve is losing a lot of high end compared to the SSL, no, the Neve still sounds better. So
these are unfalsifiable things.
Yeah,
you don't believe them.
Yeah, and unsinkable rubber ducks. So eventually, you know, I really think, thanks to the kind of the godfather of podcasting out there, Reginald Finley, his Infidel Guy show, I found kryptonite, and that was the ABX test. And man, do people get mad about it. But it, you know, if you can't tell the difference, I don't care. It you know, the worst part is that we have times, like the funniest one of all that always comes up, the DAW summing myth. Like, oh, this guy adds 2 + 2 and gets something different than this guy when he adds 2 + 2. And so what's the point of the ABX test there? Because you can already do a null test. But they're like, no, but just because it nulls doesn't mean it doesn't sound different.
But
I hear that so much.
What? If it's functionally identical down to a waveform, it's not the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Then what is the same? I mean, the GUI, that's what's different. It looks like metal. It looks like brushed metal, so it sounds different because you're perceiving it differently. Okay, I get that. It looks like whatever theme you're using on Reaper changes your perception of the sound of it. That makes sense. But if you're literally nulling it and it disappears, they're the same.
Yep. So, you know, the thing that kills me is your ears hear things different depending on how long ago you ate. What mood are you in? You know, how far are you from the speakers? Are
you wearing a hat?
Yeah, all these tiny things change your perception of sound. So when this, I don't know, somebody insulted me and said, use this most accurate of tests. Okay, so this is the best part. So one guy on one thread tells me, use that most accurate of testers, your ears. And I'm like, you know how inaccurate your ears are. And somebody on another thread,
your ears are.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. So I love pointing out the McGurk effect, because that, I don't know if you ever seen the fa 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 ba ba ba, you know, that one.
Yeah.
But so again, same day on a different thread, somebody told me, "Oh, are your ears so good that you can tell the difference?" And I'm like, "Okay, which is it, you guys? You know, which one do you want? You know?"
I think the biggest problem that we've seen isn't necessarily a problem on the surface. It just has unintended consequences, which is it's a scientific field that is also a creative field. But you get creatives that come in, and it's great that they can intuit things, right? Like, they have a natural gift for perceiving what's going on in a mix or with a source or just with sound in general. And that's awesome. I respect that they were able to do that. It took me a lot of time and dedication to get anywhere close to where I'm at right now. But there's still science to it. And if you're going to intuit that science exists, but then reject it when it's presented as science, then it's not really the material's fault. Like, you got to learn something when you're doing anything in part of a community, right?
Yeah, but, you know, I would say that, you know, just in general, politically and everything else, that science denial itself is going to be higher in the music community than just about any most other sections of society.
Yeah, it's all creatives, and creatives tend to think they're different than everybody else. But just because you can intuit something doesn't necessarily mean that you understand the concept behind what you're intuiting.
Yeah, and you know, we are our job is to intuit stuff that isn't real, because if you hear the wind rustling the grass, and to you that sounds like there's a tiger out there, you're not going to get eaten, so you live longer, and you pass on that trait. So you know, we're meant to fool ourselves, and audio pareidolia is one of the funnest things. You know, when I finally got a chance to work with Rick Rubin, I was asking him, you know, about did you really put all those, you know, how did you put those laughs in the first Danzig album? You know, all these different places where there's like these laughs. And he goes, "What laughs are you talking about?" And like, you know, the laughs, like everybody knows about these laughs, you know. And then I show him the thing. He goes, "No, that's just the cymbal decaying. That's nothing." I'm like,
Oh.
"What? That's a laugh, man. What are you talking about?"
It's an urban myth. Oh
yeah.
no.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, like we are the masters of fooling ourselves. So the idea that, oh man, it's just frustrating. And
yeah,
you know, the logical fallacies will get you a long way. ABX tests will get you a very long way. You know, as much as people hate him, Ethan Weiner's got a great video of AES lies, damn lies and statistics or something. And one of my favorite ones out there, it's not really just about audio, but it's Brian Brushwood, I think, is Scams, Sasquatch, and the Supernatural. And he has a really good show of eyewitness testimony, and you know, all kinds of other things about our memory. And you know, as mixers, we use these tricks to fool you into thinking, like precedence effect. We start out with this giant guitar sound, and then once you think it's there, you can make the guitar super thin later in the song. Nobody will ever know the difference. So now you just opened up a lot of space for the mix, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, hopefully they don't listen to it from the middle, because then you're screwed. But you know, if you do listen from the you know, from the start, there's all kinds of things we use to fool ears. You know, we use compression to fool you into thinking that something is louder than it is. We use again precedence effect to make something seem louder. So if you hear it first, it's probably going to sound louder if they're close to the same level. You know,
yeah,
so
we use
all kinds of stuff
to do
fool.
the same thing. I was answering a question today from a guy who was like, "Hey, I'm doing gang vocals for the first time," and in his entire metal mixing career, never had to touch gang vocals because I guess they're a dated thing. I don't know.
No.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, "Oh, I do tons of gang vocals."
Don't tell Venice.
But he literally said, "What do I do with gang vocals? How do I get them to do the thing I want?" And I was like, "Well, it depends on the thing you want, because if you want them to sound close and intimate, right, then you're going to pan them less. You might emphasize a little bit more, I don't know, like 1K, 1.5K, where the ears are sensitive, so that they sound closer. But if you want them to sound far away, then pan them wider, have them less 1K to 2K, and it's like, that'll deceive you into thinking they're further back than they are." And he was like, "Oh, is that how that works?" I was like, "Yes, that's why we EQ things, is to fit them in the mix, either farther or closer away or whatever." So that's how we get depth, is deceiving the ear.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but that's one of the fundamentals of psychoacoustics.
Yeah, it always cracks me up when there's guys who are just so good at using dynamic range devices to change the tone of a sound, and using EQs to change the behavior of the sound. But it, you know, that's really part of what they do, you know?
Yeah. And like I said, a lot of people just intuit it, but they don't always know why they do the thing they do, which can help them a lot. I'm not knocking them, because if they can get away with not knowing a lot, like on an intellectual level, but rather just a feeling level, then all the better for them. I wish them luck if they find something that they struggle with, because knowing in theory what will help is going to do a lot more for you than trying to hit or miss something. You know, trial and error in this field can make or break a client's confidence in you.
Oh yeah, that's what sucks. Like we're, you know, we're supposed to have all the answers. The secret is we don't. You know, sometimes stuff doesn't work right away, and sometimes stuff never works. Like I don't care if you bring in 400 toms and you hit them all as soft as you possibly can, but you bang the hell out of your cymbals, your toms aren't going to sound big unless I draw them all in one by hand. You know, I mean, that's sorry.
Yeah, that's the eternal struggle, is drummers who hit things harder than others and then want the things that they tapped to be like thunder in the mix.
Yeah. That would, back in the day, like, so they still had Quiet Riot was still a thing.
Oh, I love
people
Quiet Riot.
Bring in these big giant tom sounds. They're like, I want it to sound like doom 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 doom, and like, and then they come in, like, hit their toms as fast as they possibly can, as lightly as they possibly can, then bang the hell out of the cymbals before and after them. And I'm like, oh, okay. And this was before, it's before computers. So I was like, okay. So they're fighting the whatever, the 4-at machine or the Elise's DM5 or whatever.
Oh man. Ugh. That's definitely dating this. I mean, if Quiet Riot didn't date that, I mean, the tech does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually, more than anything, it's Drumagog that got me onto the computer.
Really?
Yeah, that's what pulled me on. And I think I released the first third-party samples. They were free, so they weren't the first commercial third-party samples, but I put them out there. And I fully intended, right when I was using it, that I was going to fly that back onto the tape machine, and then I was going to mix back in the analog world. But then I was like, wait, I already have it here. Let me try it. And then
you had other plans.
Yeah. And then from then on, I was like, I don't want a mixer anymore. But I'm sitting in front of an SSL 4000 and on one side, and a Neve, what was it? I think the 8108 on the other side, and a Trident AB in the middle room. And I don't want mixers anymore. It was, and then, it's, again, when you go inside one of these forums or Facebook groups, they're like, well, if you ever heard a real mixing board, you wouldn't be using this stupid Reaper thing. You're like, okay. Well.
If you didn't have an SSL 4000, what would you have known, right? Like, if you don't own one, well, you used to own one. So I think you would know what you're talking about better than the person who's telling you you need a mixer, because clearly they don't know.
But again, it's just the thing again. Like, they assume their own inadequacy. The worst part is when they completely switch the context on you. The only thing they know is recording themselves. So they have no idea that no, I can't just replace the player. This is the artist who came in. This is who, especially like in this audiobook case, I'm not going to change. This person wanted the other person on the book. I can't change that,
As much as it's a struggle in the moment when you're trying to make it work, it's better than losing the job.
Yeah. And you're sometimes it took me a lot of time before I really could get in this situation, but put yourself in, I hate to say it, it took me so long. Put yourself in the client's position, This is their art. They've been dreaming about this for forever. And just because they're wrong and you can't possibly express just how wrong they are, this is really what they want. So you figure out a way to make it work,
I hate to say it, but I've done stuff like that where I just accept it and move on, even though I know that it's not going to lead to something I want to put my name on. But then I'll ask them myself. I'll be like, hey, do you guys mind if I have just a remixed version for myself that I put in my portfolio? Oh, yeah. And if they say, yeah, then that's cool, But especially with people who are new. They have ideas. They're new to music or recording or whatever. And they have, like, I want to say a grand aspiration for what their art becomes, but it doesn't fit the reality, Like, I had a guy say, can you take all of the low end from the bass and put it in the guitars?
Oh, yeah. After Korn, that was a thing,
Yeah, but not the way they were playing. It didn't work the same because their stuff was all like regular power chord rock and roll, where I hate to say it, but all the low end of the guitars was just fart.
Oh.
So it wasn't going to work for their situation, but they heard it somewhere and they thought it was a good idea. So I had to do the best with that I could. And then I did a remix later on for myself just to see how it could have been. And most of the band loved the remastered version more, but by then it was too late because, as I know a lot of people have experienced, the band broke up a couple weeks later.
Yeah, the worst thing that ever happened to music was bands, you know.
It's like having a wife, but 4 of them, and they all want their own thing.
Oh,
so,
you know, think about something like the Beastie Boys. Their first big album made them a pile. I mean, I think that probably went platinum or whatever. And so now they got the money to do what it is that they want. And sure enough, when the artist gets to do what they want, you know, it's usually, boy, it's intolerable, man. Honestly, usually.
Yeah, it's people's desires meeting limitations that usually makes art compelling. But if you take away the limitations, it can just get real out there and no longer grounded.
Yeah.
Some people did really well with that, though. Like Hendrix and Prince did incredible once all the limitations were lifted. But
you know, with Prince, he went and bought himself his own real gear and had to run it. And I think that grounds you in a way that a lot of people just kind of floating in the clouds and assuming that you can just magic your way onto vinyl or whatever. You know, I think Prince had an understanding of probably everything. You know, after seeing the Dave Chappelle thing where he's like beating everybody at basketball and then serving them pancakes, you know, I'm just pretty sure that guy was just unstoppable.
Yeah, dude could do anything except for whatever reason make a documentary. That was like his white whale. He always wanted to make one. He hired so many people to direct a documentary, and in the end, he never got a documentary out of it.
Oh wow, I never even knew that.
Yeah, that's because there was no documentary.
Oh, wow.
There was like thousands of hours of footage from multiple directors and camera crews and all this stuff. And eventually he was just like, no, none of this is what I want. I combed through all of it and didn't see anything I wanted. So we'll save this for later. And he kept saving it for later. And that's what happens when you keep saving things for later.
Yeah. Let man, for bands, for guys who have mixing projects that they you know, maybe they're doing for free for somebody that they mean to get around to whenever. When we were running all these little kid bands around here, I always reminded them that the most important rule is the show must go on. And a big part of Murphy's Law that went to that rule was that anybody could get run over by a truck anytime. So you better make sure you got your stuff done and ready.
Yeah.
And, you know, somebody better be able to take over for you when you do get run over by a truck. I know that's not what you're supposed to be telling 8-year-old kids, but whatever.
8-year-old kids?
Oh man, they were 12 when they quit. I mean, they were real little when they first went out.
Wow, that's crazy. That's a lot younger than I thought. I thought you were talking like 12 to 15, maybe.
Oh no, they were annihilating the working bands around here for the most part. And it started getting ugly because of that. But
ouch. Yeah, that would hurt some people's pride, I think.
But you know, Tom Gibbons, the guy used to work with his sons like a super shredder. But he would Skype in and talk to the kids. I mean, it's kind of Full Metal Jacket at first, but he would just tell them about the realities of life on the stage and road and stuff. And they're like, oh, well, we don't have to do any of that because it's all a tiny island here. Think how lucky we are. We got it easy. So they looked at it like, oh man, if these guys could do it over there where it's impossible, we can definitely do it here, you know. But
we've got a captive audience who ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, but the truth was, you know, being in a really competitive environment over there actually makes you a lot better. So they did have a hard hill to climb, but they did it, you know. And they when they were 12, they were done. So
I think that's one of the problems that also has a parallel in the recordings industry, is that we've got a lot of competition and a lot of hills to climb. So the people that are good but don't really know things on a scientific level, they're still going to get acclaim and they're still going to be able to tell people whatever worked for them, but they may not necessarily understand the context of why it worked for them. You
see, and this ties right back into the whole point to why I wanted to do this today. And I had a time when I was working at Vintage. We had a guy who had some serious hits on this 12-bit Sony reverb from way back in the day.
No way.
Yeah, and this is early internet, so there was eBay, but really we just had to keep calling. He needed one to do this project, and he didn't want to pull the one out of his rack back in New Jersey, and he had to have this thing, and I can't remember if it cost $8,000 or $10,000 to get my hands on this piece of crap
man.
that you couldn't have given away back in the day, or today. I mean, I unless, but they can be so superstitious about, we don't, because you're not thinking about what it is that actually made the song a hit or whatever. You have to assume that everything is, and like baseball players and Lucky Socks, and we inherited some really big bands that we had no business having over at Vintage, because the owner had bought some mixing consoles and things that these bands were superstitious about, and they ended up, well, LA was kind of falling apart at the time, which is lucky for me, but there's the Rodney King riots and earthquakes and fires and all this stuff. So we ended up with a lot of bands that really, we got an education fast, but these superstitious things would bring the bands, and it's like, no, it's your guys' songs, man. I keep looking at this old Misfits album, this crappy recording Misfits thing, and think of how many billions of times people have bought this thing. It sounds like crap, but it's the songs, man. I mean, I want it to sound good, but
I mean, listening to like early Ramones, I listen to that and I'm like, ow, that doesn't feel good, but people love it. I've seen so many of my friends say, oh yeah, man, like everything the Ramones released for the first 3 albums, those are like the best recordings of all time. And I'm like, no. I can tell you why no too. I have a list of like complaints about the EQ, about the recording, about the performances, and they're like, no man, it's the feel. I'm like, okay, well, I can't argue with that. It sells.
Well, it just kills me where the focus, sometimes you'll have those, I'm sure you've had these sessions where a bunch of hours are getting eaten up on something that you're just positive doesn't matter it one bit at all. It's like, hey, it'd be nice is if you showed up with your your guitar in tune, or how about a drum head that doesn't have a hole in it, that might matter. But this thing that you're worrying about right here, where you have to turn your 14th pedal in your pedal board a tiny little tweak degree or whatever, that nobody's ever going to hear. Nobody gives a crap about that, man.
You have no idea how comfortable and satisfied you've just made me, knowing that somebody else exists in this paradigm of like, we need to spend an hour and a half twisting the tone knob a fraction of a degree.
Compared to like the guy showing up stoned and can't play in time, like, okay, wait, which one do you think is more important here?
I actually ended up having to putting it all together. Like in my contract, I have that we're going to, before any recording starts, I expect some level of communication, just discussions of stuff. I'll request materials, demos they've made, live sessions they've done, and stuff like that. But I also request that we establish time frames and not necessarily a schedule, but little rules of thumb, like contingency plans. Like if it takes you more than 15 minutes to get a part, we can try for somebody else and see if they're able to get up to that part while you practice the thing, and then we come back. Like little time saving things, Oh
man, so you're this is why you're successful. You're way more organized than I am.
I've dealt with so much crap in my life up to this point. I had one guy back when I was still charging by the song, and I'd read somewhere on Gear Sluts that charging by the song is a good way to get first-time customers. What they didn't tell me on Gear Sluts was that if you charge by the song and don't specify how long the songs and sessions will be before you roll over into some contingency cost, you're going to get somebody who's coming in just like, I want to record a 24-minute song, please, with 6 acts in the song. And then they later cut it up and make it an EP. Like, that's just something that happens that if you don't learn from and put in your contract, you're gonna get screwed.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you, like for me, when I was learning, every band that came in, sometimes I barely met the band at all. There was a producer, and it was big money. It was always a producer that was in charge of everything, and so you always knew exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And so when I start going off by myself, I'm starting to record bands that don't have a producer, and I learned real fast, man, but not fast enough. That right away, before anything else, you got to figure out who's in charge of that band. And if you don't, you're screwed. And I didn't realize that. I'm like, oh no, these things always work themselves out, but no, they don't.
No, I honestly thought the same exact thing. And that's why that's in my contract now. Yeah. Having a go-between or a liaison to handle all the communication for the business side of it. So like, I'm cool with talking to the guys, right? I'm cool with going out to dinner with the drummer and like talking about some of the stuff you like to at the mix. But when it comes to revisions or matters of arrangement or recording, one person only. If they want to designate two people, that's fine, as long as the two people are in contact with me at the same time. I don't want one person going behind somebody else's back and that causing an issue, right? Yeah. I don't want to be responsible for band drama.
Yeah, and you know that the most likely time a band is going to break up is while they're recording with you before the bill is paid. That's a given.
That statistic's always in the back of my mind during a session when I'm looking at the guys, and half of them are sitting there on the couch just like, I would have done that differently. And I'm like, that's something you should have established during band practice before you came here.
Yeah, and see all these problems right here that we're talking about. They're problems that you people sitting on the forums telling us to change the source have no idea what we're talking about because you're recording yourself. So sometimes don't project your own inadequacy onto us. We're asking a question because we got a damn question, and this is just the kind of thing. Like here I am getting snarky, but this is why it's different. I don't want to say in the real world. It's different when you aren't the customer. And when you got a revolving door studio going, you have a different set of realities.
Yeah, and it's understandable. I've been where they're at, wanting to be a part of a system and community where you're helpful. I understand they want to be helpful and act like they're imparting some kind of wisdom on you because maybe that thing helped them at one point where they were getting over anxious about something and somebody said, hey man, just use your ears and it'll guide you more than overthinking it will. In that context, that's great advice. Yeah. Like, I'm overthinking a thing. I'll just listen to it and see how it sounds and have somebody else listen to it and see what they think. That's totally good advice in that context. But if it's something like the guitarist doesn't know his part, the other guitarist wants to record it, but this guitarist doesn't want that to happen because he feels like it'll be inauthentic to the art, man. Better speakers and using my ears will not help me.
Nope. Yeah, see, that's... it's assuming things without knowing the parameters, or in a lot of cases not even be able to understand them if they were presented because they haven't really been through it yet.
Well, what's the compressor setting for an off-time bass player?
Yeah.
It sucks. Gear sluts, they've done so much good for me. They got me into like they helped me find companies that had good stuff. There were some actual good tests and stuff, like with Slate, when their plugins came out, he'd put all of his ABXs on Gear Sluts, and that was a super helpful resource. When people have put stuff on Gear Sluts from actual producers that have done things, like Dave Bendeth and people like him who make platinum selling records, they'll go on Gear Sluts sometimes and just answer questions about stuff they did on records. And that's really cool. That puts you in direct contact with the people who did the thing that you look up to. And Dave Bendeth is like my favorite producer. So the fact that he was on Gear Sluts, it made me just cry the first time I found out. Oh. It turns out there's a lot of other people who have no records to their name or have only recorded like their own demo. And they're going to give you the same level of information as the other person, but it may not be right. They can just talk about it forever.
Yeah, that's one of the things, one of the fallacies that's so important here is and it's not always this one, but it's usually related to it, is the sunk cost. Like these guys you have to justify, if you bought something for too much money, you have to find a way to justify it. And
Yeah,
the way the marketing
can't.
machine works, they just want you. It's not just that they lie to you; it's that they convince you to lie to other people, and that's where it really gets ugly. And I just hate to see it.
You know what's really dumb? I don't really like the sound of UAD plugins most of the time.
Well, you know, we as OG Reaper users have a horrific hate relationship with UA. I know Scott Stillwell got the newer one and he says it's real good, but
Yeah,
I was right there in person when Justin offered to fix their stuff with UAD one, and they said no. And
yeah.
he was, for the one time I've ever seen him actually say something like this, he said, "I guess they don't care about their customers." And coming, you know, in case if you haven't read between the lines, whenever that guy actually does say something or write something, Justin is about the nicest person. Like if somebody was going around murdering people and you asked Justin about him, he would say, "Well, you know, he's really wearing a nice shirt today, isn't he? I mean, he's just doesn't have a bad thing to say about anything." And that was I guess they don't care about their customers or whatever. I'm sure I'm paraphrasing it, but I'm like, wow. And you know, we've done everything we could to get their stuff working. And I mean, even back in the Vegas days before I met Justin, they were, I don't remember. I don't want to say that they lied, but I'll say that they didn't handle it very well. And I wasn't at all thrilled with them, but you know, I had the plugins and they seemed to sound okay. Like everybody was saying that they were dull sounding or something, but again, you know, what do you run some numbers? I wasn't seeing any like holes in the signal or something that they're talking about. Sound fine to me. I don't know.
Just a preference thing. But that was the thing, is when I would go on Gearsluts and ask about, like, say, this person's $9 sale on an analog emulation of a thing, or this free plugin on an analog emulation of a thing. You know what my response was almost universally? Get the UAD version.
Oh man.
And it made me hate them. Like, I have no ill will towards the company, even knowing what I know. But my response would always be, first, 1, I'm broke. 2, I use Reaper, which back then actually explained the problem. Nowadays, I think you can do like UAD1 flush bypass settings and stuff in the preferences, and it'll usually work. But I was never even a big fan of the sound of them. They were okay, but they weren't magic to me. When Slate stuff came out, it was magic to me, so I got that instead.
Yeah, and the idea that again, just like the mic preamps and just like the guitar amps and stuff, that only this one guy could possibly make these things sound a certain way. No, get out of here, man. Most of this stuff is DSP that exists. I mean, you're going to modify it or whatever, but it's not always, but usually. And you know, plus I don't want a dongle, you know, like, what if I have to use another? I'm terrified because I might be using a different computer someplace to work. So I don't, and you know, everybody gives me crap about using free plugins, but hey, makes it a lot easier, you know?
Yeah, and it makes it a lot easier to take them portably. If I want to put Reaper on my portable hard drive, which I do because I'm in and out of a lot of different studios and I want to use what I'm comfortable with, it's so much easier to have all the free plugins and all the stuff that doesn't require complicated copyright protection.
Yeah.
And doesn't require me to pull out a USB that's just going to take up a USB port.
Yep. You know, the USB thing's not too terribly bad. I like how Waves is doing that now. And I mean, compared to an iLock or a PCI card, I mean, get out of here.
No, definitely not a PCI card.
Oh man,
I'm looking at my iLock right now and thinking to myself, man, that's never leaving this computer. Why is it there?
I've got one on my laptop and one on my desktop, and so I think it's only for Slate trigger at this point. And man, if XLN's trigger would have a regular MIDI output,
right,
I would be on that. I mean, I don't want to say it because I don't want to lose yet another plugin that I'm hoping to make, but XLN's discrimination is about as amazingly perfect as I could imagine. Like their trigger is just absolutely amazing.
I never bothered with it. I gave it to a friend after I purchased it. And I was like, look, I'm going to stick with Trigger 2 for a while because it's my thing. But it's a good product. Don't get me wrong. They get some amazing stuff out of it. But it's not my cup of tea because I didn't really like the samples, honestly.
Oh, I don't use the samples. They're just the way the MIDI comes out of there is the problem for me. It doesn't have like a MIDI output like Trigger does, you know? I mean, you can drag it out of there or whatever it is, but it was like, I don't know.
Yeah. And honestly, Trigger it's just my favorite plugin that I have for drums at all. Like, not gonna lie, I can swap out any other plugin I'll ever use on a drum, whether it be an EQ or a compressor, and I can get the sound I want. Trigger as a gate is just phenomenal, and as a MIDI controller, just phenomenal. Like, oh man, I could use that for days. But yeah, I wouldn't have it if I listened to Gear Sluts. They told me to go with Drumagog, and when Drumagog 5 came out, I'm pretty sure they had some pie on their faces.
And I am, the other day I was looking at the NAMM news, and it said these new interfaces were coming out from Arturia, and I'm pretty sure that's the Drumagog guys who made Arturia. So I'm glad they're still doing good. But I'll tell you, like, they had a lead for so long, and then it just fell apart. Like Drumagog 5 was buggy, man. I mean, it was not a thing. And you know, early on, those guys had really done a lot for me, and I did as much back as I could for them. And I feel bad that I don't use Drumagog no more, but now they got that Arturia, so I'm glad they're doing something good. So
do they? I thought Drumagog was Wave Machine Labs.
Yeah, I thought, isn't that the same guys?
Or it's not the same guys?
I think so.
I thought Wave Machine Labs have been the same since like the 90s.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think yeah, you know what? Who knows? Let's use the Google Wave Machine Labs Arturia. I'm sure some synthesizer guy out there is like, oh, you guys are so dumb. It's totally like they know. Oh yeah, it says review of Aria. Oh no, that's Aria. That's something else.
Yeah.
Oops. Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Looks like they're doing something too, though, so I guess that's okay. Yeah. So whatever Aria is. Oh man, bummer.
Yeah, but Arturia has been real big ever since like dubstep was a thing. They got their name out there with their dubstep machine making things or whatever. So
all right. See, now one of the smartest things you can do in this business is to try and believe as many true things as you possibly can and as few false things as you possibly can. I think I just got one less false thing out there, so that's good.
I hope so. Otherwise, we're both wrong and we're both false.
Yeah, some keyboard guys out there going, I know what that is. You're a dummy.
Yeah. Well,
you never know that the midiots are going to get you.
Oh, the midiots? Is that a thing?
I don't know. Like when Reaper first started, you know, we say like one of the things that hurt Vegas was not really having MIDI, but so many of us were happy that it didn't have MIDI. But you know, the MIDI guys, you know, they made a good case. And nowadays I use MIDI a lot for drum triggering stuff just because it's easier to edit after the fact. And so I'm really glad that MIDI's there. But
me too.
I think now like MIDI is a badge a lot of guys wear with pride. So I don't know if that's an insult.
I thought MIDI was a band.
Oh, yes, it should be.
Yeah, man, learning so much today. Is this even a rant anymore? Like,
I mean, I'm always ranting, but you know, hopefully, you know, I mean, the whole reason when I came up with, you know, they're doing this today is like it's how upsetting it is when you get like, think of the poor noobs, man. Like they don't, especially if they're not like flame warriors or whatever. They just, I just got attacked. Like what did I do wrong? Like you know, I've gotten. Yeah, so you know the Uggos, the Ultimate Guitar Forum, you know, where they post like really, it's like a scientific peer review about post tablature and stuff. But then you have fanatically angry nut jobs over there, like you do in any guitar forum. And one time, there's like this automatic feed thing that puts latest posts up into your thing before you can even see or do anything else. And this was like this question about Reaper. And so I was like, okay, well, I know something about Reaper, so I'll answer this. And these guys got so angry at me. They're like, man, you should check the date on that thread. And like, not that I'm wrong or not anything else, yeah, I guess I necroed the thread,
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm sorry, but it showed up in my thing here that I'm supposed to do this before I see anything else. Sorry. They get just so mad. And they finally are at the point where you're like, I'm so sorry to have offended you. And I'm sorry that this killed your mom and murdered your wife and everything else this must have done for you to be so upset about this, like,
yeah.
And that's how people feel sometimes when they're asking a basic question. And especially, man, when I was trying to go through all this guitar processor software, whatever, especially on the iPad stuff, especially if it's a question that really should have an easy to Google and find answer, but it doesn't. And these guys get attacked for asking the question, especially if you get RTFM'd. Like if you get RTFM'd and it ain't in the M, oh man, you deserve to, there's a special kind of hell for you, like,
yeah,
seriously, like, man, I hate those people.
Especially when it comes to questions of latency. When I put together that list, right, I had to put together a list based off of sparse information, except from Waves. Waves is like, unironically, one of the only companies that puts together a page specifically for list of plugin latencies at different modes.
Oh man.
And I was like, you guys are the only ones making my job easier.
Yeah. So I tell you, so that's another one. One time I had to ask, I'm looking for a zero latency thing for like an EQ or a compressor or something. And just everybody hammers me like, man, you noob, have you ever used Reaper before? Do you know anything about it? And like they're like, oh, all stuff adds latency. And like, there's all this.
Well, that's a misnomer because not everything adds latency. Oh man, I hate to derail, but I just opened up the Gearslutz forum, gearslutz.com. The first thing it says is join the UAD platform.
Oh, sorry. That's what happens when you're running a school in the middle of a thing.
Okay. It happens.
Yeah. But anyway, they they're all saying like everything adds latency or every plugin adds latency, and then we're like, okay. So it's like there's these assumptions that people have, and they, again, don't assume that everybody is at your level. They might be way beyond you, or they might be below you in certain, and we're all good and bad at different knowledge.
I hate to say it, but I absolutely annihilated somebody the other day for saying everything adds latency, because it was another one of those questions where I was literally just asking for something comparable to another plugin that doesn't have latency. And they said, well, why don't you just use that plugin? And I said, well, it adds latency. And they were like, well, everything adds latency. And I said, no. How do you measure latency? You can measure it in milliseconds, but I prefer to measure it in samples, because the latency, the pre-delay compensation that's being added is going to be added in samples in the DAW. So say 64 samples. The latency is dependent on the sample rate at that point, because samples per second is the sample rate. The number of samples added is going to be the increase in latency. And I just went off on them about the actual science behind what latency is and how you can avoid it. And they were like, whoa, man, I didn't know all that. And I'm like, oh,
well,
yeah.
In that case, you just educated somebody, and possibly the guy's going to be thankful about it. I mean, there are people where you educate them, and like, I mean, there was a debate a while back between Bill Nye and Ken Ham, right? They're debating creationism or something. And so, the one side, they lay out all these facts and everything. And I mean, just, let's take you from A to B. Here's this number adds to this equals that. And the other side is, and this is what happens in the forum all the time. Instead of, no, well, you missed a number there. You forgot to subtract there or something. No, the answer is, nuh-uh. And that's what the answer. They say argument by nuh-uh. I mean, no, not nuh-uh. Here's the facts. if you got an alternate set of facts, post them. But your alternate reality doesn't count.
If you can't explain the law that is applicable to the argument, I understand. I'm not expecting you to be a scientist with a degree in engineering and like a special workshop that you teach on like juice or something like that. You don't have to understand everything about it, but don't try to contradict somebody who's laying down facts, right? Or don't try to present something as if it's a coherent argument, but then it's literally just because I think.
Yeah.
No. Like, it's okay to let people talk when they have an issue, when they know something, or when they just want to share a fact. It doesn't have to be like, I don't agree because I have no backing for my statement, but I don't.
Oh, man. It's like, there's so many times where people say, well, since we don't know the answer, it could be this. This is always this God of the gaps or whatever.
Yeah, that can happen.
And you're like, but in this case, we have tested this and we do have the answers. I mean, if not, prove it wrong. I mean, one of the funniest ones is to watch these guys battle over clocks, external clocks.
Yeah.
And you watch these guys, like, they don't give a crap. They'll plug in 400 things in a row, and as long as it's not dropping out, they're happy with their audio. And then the pro clock guys are like, no, this makes this magical, like, leading trailing edge thing, and it's totally like you can totally hear it. And then they go, okay, well, let's null test it, and then it nulls. Like, okay, sorry. I mean, I know theoretically, maybe there's a way to make this clock thing work better, but I mean, what's going to sound better than null? I don't know.
On the subject of clocks, right? And this is a whole new layer, like a whole new dimension to what we've been talking about. But there's a guy who I really respect. He's right up there with Dave Bendeth for me, which is huge accolades. And he posted that getting a word clock changed everything.
Oh, yeah.
But
it happens.
But he went from selling gold and platinum records to selling gold and platinum records. And at the end of the day, I can't argue with his results because I don't know what his use case was. And it's very possible that the stuff he's doing is so like assisted or aided by the existence of this word clock on his network or on his system or whatever he's tying together with this word clock, that it really does make a difference. Maybe his console or his interfaces are old and they didn't have good word clocks of their own. I don't know what his situation was, but what I know is he posted about it. And in the comments section, there were people going all over the place like, oh, well, I believe it's this thing. I believe it's that thing. I don't believe it one way or the other. I don't understand all this stuff. And he was just explaining it in very simple terms. He said, well, since I've started using it, the phase cohesion in the low end for some things has been a lot better. Now, that could be accounted for by wisdom and that he's just miking things better than he used to. But between one album and the next, when you're doing hundreds of albums, you're probably not going to see that much noticeable difference between one album and the next, but maybe your first and your 30th, but he said the word clock did something. But people in the comment section who knew nothing about the stuff that he understands. And I trust his opinion on this one because he's an engineer, like an actual engineer who builds his own gear and then uses that to record. That's the kind of stuff that I respect. And he knows way more about it than I do, even though I understand the theory and the science behind it when it comes to the practical applications of the things he's building. So it's entirely possible for his use case. But people were talking about it, and he got hundreds of comments in this comment section of people either telling him he was wrong or saying, oh, then I need to go out right now and buy a $5,000 word clock. And I was like, there was no in between. There weren't people just saying, oh, I'm glad. Like, what? There was maybe one or two people who were saying, oh, that's cool. Like, I look forward to hearing the results and stuff. But other people were like, before there was any results, they said, yes, no, this is my opinion. This is my opinion. Here's why you're wrong. I was like, this is insane. It's just a dude who bought a word clock and it started a fire.
Yep. Who knows? I mean, there are fields of study and knowledge stuff where you can actually be pretty damn confident that somebody's completely wrong. So who knows? That some of the guys may have. So if Dan Lavery was there saying, "No, you're totally wrong," or if Dan Lavery was there like, "Oh yeah, your converters were crap, so yeah, of course this fixed it," I would tend to trust it, but who knows,
But that's the thing.
I know there's so much lying crap about clocks out there that drives me nuts, and where these things used to be cheap, and I actually needed because oh
boy.
So one of the things that really upsets me, and this is something, especially it happens with the guitar stuff, but so in my case, I have a bunch of Focusrite Octopre Mark II mic preamp with ADAT out on them.
I bite the advertising for that so hard. The Octopres. I just want you to know, I want them.
So when you see a picture of them, you see a whole bunch of them stacked together like you have this giant rack of Octopres and stuff.
Wait, with ADAT?
Well, I mean, enough of them, like 3 or 4 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, they have a non-defeatable word clock termination on them. So most of these, there's a type of marketing out there, and it's not really dirty, but I wish it was a little bit more up front, maybe. I don't know how to say it. And Focusrite guys, if sooner or later, I'm sure you will listen to some of this stuff. So
more realistic.
Don't kill me. You helped us out a whole lot here, and especially with Reaper and everything. But so the average home user says, "Wow, look at that Octopre. I'm going to get one because when I become a big boy, I can put 3 or 4 of them together, and then I'll have piles and piles." So I got 3 of them. So because of that non-terminating word clock, if I daisy chain the word clock, I'm going to have some clicks and pops every once in a while. Because there's no ADAT in, I can't sync it that way. Yeah. There's no real way to sync 3 of them without owning a clock distribution thing. And back in the day, those things were nothing. They didn't cost anything because nobody was stupid enough to think that this magic thing is going to spell the difference between a hit and a dud. This is before everybody was drawing all those pictures that showed like perfect square waves with the external clock and rounded flatulence without the external word clock. So you could buy these you could buy these clocks for $80-$90. They'd have like 3 or 4 outputs especially from video houses. Video houses would have piles of these things, and you would just buy this cheap word clock. It'd have 6 outputs on it, and you send it to all your ADAT junk. And it was perfect.
That sounds like a magical time.
Yeah, but now you can't. So now here I am in Hawaii, where I've got to figure out goofy ways of locking these things together, or just figuring that I'm gonna right click in Reaper and open this thing in Wavesaur or Audacity or whatever and pencil out the problem that happens every once in a while. But that sucks, man.
Yeah. I mean, there's this one company that I really like, which is Applied Recording Technologies, and they make a lot of really good low-cost stuff, like that still has the prices of the pre-artist inflation is what I call it.
Like, and if you want to talk about egg on somebody's face, that company really puts them on people, which is hilarious.
Because they make some incredible recording technology. Like they have a 4 output BNC terminated word clock. You can get it almost anywhere for like $90 to $100.
Yeah, try and find one now.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It amazes me. And on the topic of them, they make some really good pre's and compressors that people scoff at, but in A/B tests, they sometimes choose it more often.
So by you saying anything good about them, so now there's so much conformity and like this Me Too going on, and there always has been this Me Too thing in audio where like a lot of people. It's hard to say. So some people just don't know any better, so they just say, "Hey, I better do what this guy's doing because he's got the right color socks on." And then other guys say, "Hey, I don't know why it works, but I'm doing it because it does work."
Yeah.
And some guys, they really do put out killer results. They have no idea why it works, so they just assume they got to do it. So that kind of when that mic pre shootout, I forget, there was a couple of them. There's like a Gear Sluts one. There was a Lynn Fuston. What was his site called one of the other recording forums.
Oh yeah.
They had this art, like, it's like what was it? Was it the 2-channel one or the 8-channel one? It's just some cheap ass art thing. And man, everybody picked the thing. And then and the other one, they all picked the Mackie. And I was just cracking up, man, because these are guys who stake their reputation, their livelihood, everything on how bad these Mackies suck and how good their ears are that they could pick one out a million miles away. And man, they failed,
I think that's probably one of the reasons why I fell in love with art, is because I would read this stuff by Lynn Fuston from like Pro Sound News and all these other websites. And he would just be like, yeah, listen to this. And it would literally be an art piece. And I was like, no way. And that's why I don't have like a Radial DI reamp box, which would cost me like $200, or like a Whirlwind one that would cost me $199. I have an art reamp box that I got for $60. I have an art headphone pre, which it has 1/8 inch in and 1/8 inch out. It has 1/4 inch in and 1/4 inch out for independent channels.
Oh, wow.
So I can choose either of them and then output from either of the formats, which helps a lot of people who bring their own headphones. And like, how sometimes the 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch headphone converters,
it's pain in the butt, man,
don't always work the way they should for different length connectors. Yeah. Well, that's a problem I don't have to worry about. And it only cost me like $30 or $40 to resolve across 4 channels. It's crazy, the stuff they make. I wish they would sponsor me.
Who knows? Maybe I've never talked to them. Back in the day, there was this arms race between Art and Digitech, and it was mostly over this guitar stuff.
Yeah.
And both of them just started coughing up this technology so fast. Digitech had an advantage being with Harman, so they ended up making this like one processor that was peanuts for money, but it had the ultimate reverb to me. I mean, it had the template for what a reverb should be. It had a harmonizer, had everything, had choruses and dynamics and stuff. But Art started pushing more into the hardware side, which was weird because everything was going digital at the time, but Art was digging in on the hardware side. And because the funniest thing is I have one of the little like standalone 1-channel, I think it is, Art Tube MP or something like that.
Oh yeah,
and
that thing's adorable.
And a 2-channel, one of their first 2-channel tube mic pre's sitting upstairs. And wouldn't be funny after all this crap today if I brought that downstairs, plugged it in, and ended up quieter than anything else.
I can believe it because I have a Personas tube pre that just sits there. But a couple of times I brought it out for a really quiet person and it just solved my problem.
Oh, wow.
And it's crazy how I don't expect it to work, but I'll just do it on a whim and it works. It's the small things. It's the utilities that you don't consider that make all the difference in real world application.
For the most part, when if you don't have a pathological audio file, so if you got anywhere near a sensible level, whatever, everybody can assume that I have ears made out of rocks or something for this, but honestly, if you're at a sensible audio level, it's going to cost you as a company more money to make a bad mic preamp than a good one, because all that stuff's already there. The circuits are there, the topologies are there, the pieces are all there. You can just go pay somebody to just throw you one together. So it ain't going to be the mic preamp that's going to, this isn't the 90s even. This is definitely not the 80s, I mean,
although in the 80s, even Radio Shack was making stuff from materials that would be considered like actually useful today. I mean, somebody broke out and did a mic comparison with the Room EQ Wizard program at the school I went to. And my teacher he loved this program because he was like, I can choose to get the EQ of the room, like the room modes in each position. I can do all this stuff and I can test out the frequency response of mics. And he broke out this cute little, like almost lavalier sized condenser from Radio Shack. And he said, this is from like 1992. And he put it on a source, and accounting for the speakers in the room that he'd already taken with a reference mic, it was almost flat. It was
Wow.
almost completely flat. And I was like, how? But we all seek to get really flat mics with like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And he's like, yeah, I picked this up for like $3.95 from Radio Shack 5 years ago. I'm like, there's no way. Oh,
yeah, see that, and that's the thing. We need actually that you just don't pronounce such a judgment unless you've got actual measurements, and especially don't tell other people that they can't do what they want to do without real facts. Like, I mean, because this is what I did, and I really would tell people, oh no, don't buy that whatever mixing console, that pretty good one, the Neotech or whatever, that's got 24 mic pre's in it or whatever. Don't buy it. Take all the money you're going to spend on that and just buy one good mic preamp. That's what I was telling people, because that was the religion I was raised in, and it sucks. And now I if I go over and we'll look at the Uggos, somebody's like, oh, I just wanted I was going to maybe buy this blackout. I can't decide if I want a blackout or an EMG for this guitar. And they're going, you stupid idiot noob. That's a mahogany guitar. You can't put a blackout in a mahogany guitar. I'm like, man, okay.
I've never heard that one, but hey, if you think that's the best thing to do, I'll definitely go with Seymour Duncan Super Distortions.
Man.
Yeah, that's just
the whole Tonewood thing, like, man, like, oh yeah, here's nobody ever gonna listen to me again, but whatever, it's stupid, like it for the most part. An electric guitar is a motor. I mean, it really is. It's just like the thing in your car. It's just, instead of taking circular motor from the fan belt and turning it into electricity, you're taking side to side motor, breaking a static magnetic field and making electricity that way. I mean,
unironically, that is a perfect example, because the thing that makes more difference than the body of the guitar is the fretboard's wood and the strings material, the winding of the strings, all that stuff, because those are going to affect the physical properties of the thing being transduced, which is the waves of sound by the pickups. So if you're, looking to change your guitar tone but don't want to replace your pickups, you could always just restring your guitar with a different set of strings, and that might make more difference.
I did a couple of videos where I took a bunch of different sizes of strings and didn't get the results that I thought I was going to get, which was crazy. It's a sample size of 1, but
yeah,
I didn't expect what I was going to get. And now I can't even remember exactly what it was. And it turned out that there wasn't any reason for me to deviate from the size that was working well enough for me. But I had expected all this other kind of stuff to happen, and it really didn't.
String size is a feel thing. The size of the strings, until you get up to like really crazy sizes, you're not going to get that much of a difference, are you?
Well, even at really crazy sizes, like one of the funny things was that a lot of, I think one of the things I found was, I think the really thick strings put out more treble in relation to the bass.
That is actually something
going to happen.
That's something that's integral to the entire genre of gent, is really big strings causing more treble and more punch than the low end, because they need that controlled.
Yeah, and I think I had, what is it? I think it made more volume. But see, it wasn't perfect test, but I was making more volume with the smaller strings. But these are things like there's common wisdom out there, and then there's actual testing stuff. Like when these guys make these 2x4 casters and stuff, and they just like, nobody, that again, the dreaded ABX test, nobody can tell what's what. This guy, like, I think one guy like bolted a bridge to his fence and then put a you see like the shovel casters and stuff. I mean, people make anything, and it, you can't tell, so
the oil canisters with pickups in them and like 3 or 4 strings that become a legit used banjo. Like I was blown my mind.
Yeah, so really, it's important to, plenty of people spend a lot of money convincing you to convince yourself to convince others to spend money on stuff they don't need. But if you really test this stuff, or if you really just apply your basic logical fallacies to things and say,
Yeah.
what is the phenomenon? First of all, is there a phenomenon to even worry about?
Or
And a lot of this stuff goes in, the JREF used to have this $1 million challenge where if you could prove this paranormal thing, they'd give you $1 million.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff, and that's the one time I actually was involved, was Pair Cable had, I think, like $30,000 or $60,000 speaker cables that they were claiming, were superior to regular cables. And I said, hey, just take some coat hangers. Just take coat hangers and measure them, and guarantee they're gonna measure better. But then I wasn't thinking just how dirty people could get, and all they really had to do was make messed up cables in one way or shape or form that didn't measure perfectly flat, and then they could win the $1 million. I'm like, okay, wait, let's really think about this. Don't talk about superior and just say which one is going to be closer to the original source. And so again, even the parameters that you're measuring matter. So you can say, better, but in their case, all better had to be for them at first would have been different. And different is possible. I could make you some speaker cables that come out with something different on the other end than you're on.
I don't know if I want that though.
No, I wouldn't want it, but that's all they would have had to do to claim it if it was originally how it was originally worded.
Yeah, but it's a good thing they hopefully changed the parameters of that competition.
I think, but I can't remember if, these are the kind of guys, like, now that we're talking publicly and stuff, like, some of these companies are a little bit litigious and they do crazy things, even to like little guys. I mean, I remember that 12-year-old kid that some guys making like a cancer cure out of pee or something. He like tried to sue the kid and get him shut down. It's like this 12-year-old kid took this guy on, and I'm really proud of him because that was really brave and tough of him. But I don't know that I can take on it. I mean, if somebody's got the balls to charge $60,000 for a speaker cable, I can't imagine what they could attempt to do to my life. But I'm pretty sure they withdrew or when the JREF had the actual parameters stipulated that I think they withdrew.
Yeah. You know what? I shouldn't have gone on Gear Sluts. Really shouldn't have gone on Gear Sluts just now. First of all, what I see at the top is a join the UAD platform banner just covering the entire screen. That it must have been listening to me. There's no way it would have just advertised that to me without listening, because I don't look at anything UAD. But then they have articles like 10 most popular DAWs right now. And here's a hint. None of them are Pro Tools or Reaper. So I don't think they're necessarily correct. And I don't know how they got these numbers, because there's no numbers. Oh, they just have people using them and talking about them as popularity, specifically on Gear Sluts.
Well, that just goes to show it matters what it is exactly you're measuring.
Is it a topic of a Gear Sluts conversation? Is it the main topic of a Gear Sluts conversation? And that's how we find out which DAWs are the most popular on our forums. Now, that would have been nice to have in the headline. 10 most popular DAWs in our forums. Okay. That's a little more acceptable.
There's a doctor who watches out for quack stuff. And he always says meta-analysis, schmeta-analysis. And that's this is the kind of thing that's like the meta-analysis. You're like, I'm going to look at the forum titles and pick the winning football team based on that.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. That's the kind of thing I don't expect from Gear Sluts, but I always get from Gear Sluts. Not to trash on them. Like I said, they were an invaluable tool for me when I first started, especially.
They still are. I just, you have to know what it is that you're listening to, and you have to put it through a list of reality-based reality.
Like nobody says, "Oh yeah, I only use Gear Sluts for the articles." Nobody says that. It's all talking to people in the forums, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. See, most of us don't even realize they have articles.
Yeah, I just found that out actually. Whoa. I know they had classifieds, and I know they had a gear database. I knew that because most of the things that I've really wanted when I was younger are in that gear database, and it would always show up when I'd search for it in Google or whatever as one of the top results. But man,
well, I really like their acoustic forum is always good, and I mean they're fighting in there, but they're fighting
yeah,
the way you're supposed to fight. They're fighting.
they're actually fighting the good fight.
Yeah, they're arguing over competing things that actually work. You know,
Yeah,
I want to see. Hey, either you guys wins, I still win. That's good for me. I like that.
I agree. It's the best case scenario. It's not you're using this plugin, don't, as the answer to how can I get this compressor to work better.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've seen so many of those where the
like I say, that's the place where I found that that quote. You know, this guy asked the technical question, he needs a technical answer. That was Gear Sluts. So
yeah, I've seen people say to not use tools that people in the industry have used on hundreds of records. Like somebody was asking how to get a good sound out of, what was it? Oh, it was the CLA 76. Like, you know, that little plugin from Waves, the Chris Lord-Al G 1176 emulation. And somebody said the best way you can get a good sound out of it is turn it off and replace it with another one. And I'm like, fam, what? I actually got that plugin when it was on sale because I've seen people actually use it to get the kind of things I wanted to get out of it. So I was like, oh, that's the one I want to try. And I did, and it worked, and I bought it.
See, I don't understand those things. Like, they're different. Like, is there something wrong with the regular Waves 1176, or how does it what's
their model?
Different?
There's two models. There's the blue stripe model, and there's the black model. And they both impart, you can actually turn off the 50 hertz, the 60 hertz hum, you know, like the analog buttons, basically. And you can turn them off. But they also come with a selection of presets from Chris Lord-Alge himself. So when you get that, you're basically paying for emulations of his specific gear and the presets that come with it that he would use. So like when you turn it on, the first preset is called Start Me Up. You know? And there's the black, there's the blue stripe, and both of them have presets that would basically give you an idea of what he would use them for. Well, but you don't have to use them that way. And that can help you when learning how to use stuff, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, like when you use that thing, that is, you can, I mean, you still got an 1176 out of it, right? Or is there?
Yeah, definitely.
Like broken that you can't even do like 1176 stuff with it.
Oh no, it's perfect. It's everything I would want out of an 1176.
Oh, okay.
Literally, it's completely fine. It's one of my favorite 76 things besides the Slate one. And no, yeah, that's it. That's the only other one that competes, I think.
So you're using you have do you have the Slate everything bundle thing?
I
don't have a couple of the plugins?
Bundle. I had almost all of their plugins before they made the everything bundle.
Oh no.
So I did that. I have everything from the first virtual mix rack, you know. I have all the VBC, I have the drums, I have trigger, I have everything Slate made before he released the everything bundle.
Oh, see, here's another. This is another one, man. This is Slate's Facebook group.
I love their group, the Slate Audiophiles group.
Yeah, so I saw the everything bundle, and SSD5 was just coming out, and I was like, man, I hate dongling back and forth all the time. Like, can I does the everything bundle come with trigger? And oh man, that was the absolute wrongest thing in the whole universe to ever ask, you know. So everybody piles on. First there was the RTFM guys. I'm like, there is no everything manual. Okay, first of all.
There's not.
Not that I know of. Like I couldn't find one. Like a manual for the everything.
Oh, I'm not sure if it counts, but their Zendesk thing has support questions and stuff. And I think there might be one there, but
so I couldn't find anything in there about whether it comes with trigger or not. And it says, well, it's obvious, isn't it? And I'm like, if it's obvious,
No.
I wouldn't ask. And so they're like, well, duh, look at the page. And so I'm like, I'm looking at the page and
Where is it?
Don't see it. And so I think what they were trying to say was, duh, look at the page. It's not there. So obviously it doesn't come with it. And then somebody else pointed out, hey, there's a lot of things that it comes with that don't show on the page.
Yeah.
Like, man, you guys are buttheads, like honestly, this is the kind of thing. Don't assume, like what, principle of charity. Just assume the person might be asking the question for the reason that they're asking. Oh, yeah, that's the other one. I'm like, why are you assuming that I'm asking something besides I'm asking this question specifically, Like, come on.
Yeah. I think it really does come down to the environment, though. Like the Slate Audiophiles group in particular. Not going to pick on them, but Slate's a guy from Jersey. He's kind of rough as a dude, and he's kind of straightforward. He's a straight shooter. That's what he does. When he talks in the forums, he's real laid back, nice guy. But when somebody asks a dumb question, he'll only take so much of it before he goes off on them a little bit. And he's just like, okay, can somebody else answer this guy? And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But the people in that group tend to be people who now spend $14 a month on plugins.
Yeah.
And that's great, but I think it's a radically different community and thought process. Maybe even a better one. I don't know. Because they're not spending hundreds of dollars and expecting it to be top notch. And if it's not top notch, they'll tell you it is anyway to justify the purchase.
Yeah, that's the sunk cost. Yeah.
And I prefer having noobs who aren't trying to justify a purchase so much as people who will swear up and down that they have made the right choice, and if you don't make the right choice, you're not going to be successful. But the Slate forums in particular are really interesting. I see a ton of support for people all the time, but then a couple of people who are like, learn English next time when you're trying to ask a question, and I'm like, what? Guys, you didn't have to even comment if you didn't understand the question, or you could have asked for clarification. That's okay. Like saying, oh, well, I don't really get this. Like, that's how I am in the Reaper user forum, because everybody around the world uses Reaper in like every country. I had a guy in Sri Lanka send me a mix that he just sent me the Reaper project for and all the files, and I loaded it that way because it was just easier for him. And communicating was a little bit tough. So he said, what do you have? And I was like, Reaper. And he was like, oh, I can just send the whole project file. And I was like, yeah, send the folder and we're good to go. It's okay. I'll do it. And it's not impossible to work with people who speak other languages, especially if they're trying to speak yours. You can just ask questions in simple terms. But people on some of these forums are like, I didn't understand what you said, therefore I'm going to make fun of you.
Yeah.
And that's just horrible.
Yeah, man, that's the thing. It's like everybody, and I know there's an urge that you just absolutely have to put your 2 cents in no matter what. And I have to fight that urge in myself all the time. But lots of times especially when you're talking technical questions, really, like when you're asking like,
yeah,
how many inches tall is this thing? Like really specific questions. If you don't know, just don't. Oh man, just shut up.
Well, I could imagine that if it's anything like this other thing.
Yeah, even that, an informed guess, fine. Yeah. But like, I'm looking at this thread that made me go up on this thread right now, and like, it's just the funniest crap. I mean, come on, like, okay. I know these Midas mic preamps, whatever. They're not the most expensive $bajillion things in the world, and they're packed. Tons of them are packed in one little spot, so there could be a little bit more noise, but
there's very little crosstalk in the modern Midas preamps. Like they're pretty clean.
Good. And I'm surprised because this company that is a group of guys that test things from time to time. I actually posted the PDF. They like to call out bad things, you know,
Yeah,
unless they
I
really
know I do.
paid off. It actually tests pretty damn good. And then like, so yeah, it's the other thing is these cloud lifter things. Like to me, like when every time I saw it, maybe these guys might have been changing my mind about it, but it
Yeah.
seems like these things were scams. Like, I mean, if I mean, if you're boosting the signal at the mic, then that means that the low level noise that you're going to pick up on the cable, definitely that might be way better. But putting two active devices in front of each other, you know how many mic preamps get sold because they're class A and discrete, you know, where we don't have amplifiers feeding into each other and stuff. So I would think that it's gonna noise and distortion is gonna be worse by putting two mics in a row. So I don't, or two amps in a row, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was personally confused about the cloud lifter back when I was first looking at SM7, and it was actually the reason I didn't go with one was because if my Prius can't drive it without getting like a $200 edition or whatever, I don't want it. But it turns out, and my dad actually explained this one to me because I was guffawing at the idea of it, you know, talking out of my butt and not understanding what it was, but still like looking down on it. I was like, yeah, people are trying to sell these cloud lifter things for however much money when the SM7 is just not a very loud mic to begin with and all this stuff. I'm like, why would anybody take that deal? He was like, now hold on a second. The SM7 is one of my favorite mics. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. But I wasn't talking down on the SM7, really. I was more going after the cloud lifter. And he was like, the cloud lifter does make a difference. And he showed me. Now, I don't remember what they were because this was years ago, but he actually showed me the numbers and used a cloud lifter and showed the readout. And he was like, what do you use? And I was like, Reaper. And he said, okay, well, we'll use it on your computer. And he plugged it into my Prius, right?
Yeah.
And the amount of signal to noise I got using the cloud lifter was a 20 dB difference from just cranking my Prius. So
wow.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. And that's what the one guy saying in the Reaper forum was, you get like 20 dB of clean gain. And ordinarily I scoff at these buzzwords like clean gain because, you know, it's not, if it's clean gain, it's a little bit of a misnomer usually because typically gain implies that you're driving a circuit. So that alone kind of irritates me, but it's just a buzzword. When I saw hard evidence that I was able to get more from an SM7B, which is a really low output mic with a cloud lifter, like 20 dB more than my circuit was driving just my preamps cranked, I was, needless to say, quite impressed that it was a thing.
So I wonder exactly what that is. If that's noise that you're getting from having such a low signal going across a mic cable. I mean, it makes sense. So like, but you know what the funny thing is, before this modern Me Too culture where they're like, I need an SM7B, me too. SM7B, me too. And I'm like, is there an SM7 that's not a B? For instance, before you guys all talk like parrots and everything like that.
There was an SM7A, but that's old.
Yeah. Can you buy it now? I mean, so back in the day, we used SM7s. Like no joke. We had them. Yeah. We had them for snare and we had them for heavy metal vocals back in the day.
Michael Jackson used one on Thriller.
We didn't have cloud lifters. We had, I know they're magic and they're super perfect magic, whatever. But we had Neve, Class A Neve mic preamps, and they were noisy as hell. And we still didn't have any trouble with these SM7s. We if you wanted to use an SM7, you use an SM7. But I think for the most part, we were using them on really loud sources. So that's probably why it never actually bothered us. But
noise is so subjective per genre, and like nowadays noise is rarely a problem with preamps. It's usually just environments anyway. So
I loved all the what hey guys, assume that I'm really asking about the mic preamp. Stop talking about my rooms, stop talking about my magical power, whatever. Like this is that whisper, you know, what is it, DAW box said, hey, shout out to the DAW box guy. It's pretty good isolation, sorry, you know. And I'm asking about mic preamp noise, and for the guy who doubted me, take whatever interface you got, mic preamp, whatever, unplug your cable from it, and just turn it all the way up and
That's
listen.
what I do.
And if you can't hear it, record it, then normalize it in Reaper and listen to it again. You'll hear what it sounds like. There's a certain sound that mic preamp noise makes. So what I did is I wanted to hear, by unplugging the mics in here, I just wanted to turn it up and listen. What does this mic preamp sound like? And when does it start getting ridiculously loud? And on these Midases, because it was weird because my guitar is plugged in from a DI, and I have it at plus 32 decibels gain. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of gain to be cranking on this thing compared to my normal mic preamps my Focusrite ones that I'm used to. But then they go up to like, let's see, let me turn this knob here. They go up to 6 plus 60. Okay, whatever. Yeah. And they start making objectionable noise to me at about plus 48.
Really?
And, yeah. And so that's where I'm starting to hear. I mean, I'm starting to hear noise there. And the problem is that at plus 48 with this particular person speaking, at plus 48, my peaks that I get from her are around plus 24 or plus 20. Minus 24 decibels full scale.
No.
So she's got like no volume coming out. Her breathing is around minus 20 or so.
Now, I'd like to make a devil's advocate case for these people, because in this particular instance, I feel like they are trying to be helpful because it's just the environment they're in. And
I know they're trying to be helpful for the most part.
They're assuming that your problem lies elsewhere because they're not at a level where they would even come close to needing that kind of preamp knowledge. Like their environments are bad enough usually that even at a low level, they're just denoising things.
Yeah.
And I get that. Every channel of my preamp, I've done exactly that thing. And I have both a reefer. Oh no, I'm just saying that out loud for the first time. Oh.
Yeah, we were trying to figure it out when it was first getting made. Like, hey, you call it reefer?
Yeah. Oh no. But I have a reefer preset for every individual channel denoised so that I can just, pull it up if it's maxed out for that individual mic.
And maybe I'm wrong, but I was assuming that there's going to be some kind of artifacts from it, unless I'm like crazy insanely careful. So I wasn't gonna send them a file like that.
With reefer, that name, I've noticed that the artifacts existed a lot worse back in the day, and they've gotten a lot better. I also have, as part of a bundle, the Acon Digital Restoration Suite, which I needed for one specific purpose, but it came with a denoiser, and that works really well for not having artifacts. So I've been using that a lot more than reefer recently, but reefer still works really well, and I've used it for commercials and film studios that needed denoising of certain tracks. I've used reefer and gotten down to like ridiculous levels of noise cancellation while also not affecting the vocal too much. And that included with a girl who was like one of my closest friends I've worked with in commercials. And she had to step in and do the voice acting for one of her own commercials. Automatically when I say that she had to step in and do it herself, that it means that there was nobody else available.
Yeah.
And her voice was just so quiet. She was talking like this about something about asthma. And I was like, oh no. Like, I'm pretty sure I might have just gotten gated or something because of that. But it was that quiet. It was so ridiculously low. And the levels that it was recorded at when I got it were also really low.
Yeah.
And reefer saved my life. I feel really weird saying that sentence.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do, compression and EQ, everything else wise down the road. And I'm just terrified to impart some kind of thing that's tying their hands. And the easy way to say it from somebody who doesn't have to do this for a living is to, well, just send them the raw tracks too. But when you do,
they don't want those.
Yeah, you're also committing them to more time than they were planning on spending. So a lot of you guys out there need to understand this, that there's quality and there's time, and and there's a threshold for both, and you can't assume that you're going to be allowed to spend somebody else's time on something, and when you do, they charge you for it. That's not their time. That's your time. One way or another, you're going to be charged for that. You may not pay them, but you're not getting the next job from them either. You know, like it's not an easy thing. And I was lucky I was even able to do this one. I don't do audiobooks, but this is somebody that is awesome that I got a chance to work with, and that's one of the few things that actually happens that's going to matter at all outside of Hawaii that happened in Hawaii. So I'm glad to have had it. I don't want to screw it up.
Just as an aside to help you out with this problem, when I've done audiobooks for stuff like the Libre Foundation or whatever, who does all the free and open source audiobook stuff.
Oh yeah.
The recommended noise floor is down to like -60 dB at the highest. So if you have something that's noise floor is at -70 dB, then usually that's a good place to aim for. So using reefer below -60 dB, you can usually get away with 0 artifacts, especially on best quality and with a ridiculous filter size. So yeah, that's a general range to shoot for when it comes to sending to an audiobook.
Oh, good. See, I don't know that I'm ever going to do another one, but wait, again, I'm pretty sure I asked this on it might have been on a different group, but I was asking, what are some best practices that you guys are doing lately? And like, well, use your ears. Okay, thanks a lot, man.
Still haven't stopped using my ears. Yeah. I'm doing okay.
I totally wouldn't have thought of that one,
Yeah, no, that's just a best practice from my experience with audiobooks, which are their own specific industry. It's like there was the Red Book standard, and then audiobooks have their own standard, and you just got to know these things.
Yeah, and see, I don't. I just say I want the loudest signal I can possibly get with the lowest noise.
Yes,
and then I want to make sure there's no glitches and pops and things like that. And
that's really all they care about. Their technical specs are really just to weed out the people who can't do it, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, that's pretty much what I've been told. And I've only done a couple of audiobook things, like a couple of chapters to like City of Endless Night by, who was it? Milton Milo Hastings and stuff.
Oh, man, there was some crazy thing that I heard about on the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, and it was a book, and it was on that, like the free audiobook guys, and it was a name like that too, but it was like about this Earth was going dead, like the heat was dying off, and so they all lived in some kind of pyramid thing.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I want to hear this book. And I listened to it, and it's in the goofiest period speaking kind of stuff, like some kind of like goofball Shakespearean English, but even weirder. And I was like, wow, this is crazy, but this is so awesome that a lot of these books that, not every book in the world is ever going to be translated to Braille, for one thing. Yeah. And so now you have this thing where all these books, it's almost like Project Gutenberg for audio
listening. Yeah.
It's so cool.
That's why I wanted to get involved, because I love that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of classical literature.
Yeah, I wish I remember the name of this thing, but it was like the goofiest. Like, I'm like, oh man, I don't think I can listen to the rest of this, but what a very interesting concept.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff gets dated pretty quickly after it's written, but yeah, for the most part, it all holds up in a contemporary way, usually.
Yeah.
Oof. But yeah, just some pointers.
Yeah, it'd be nice, see, and this is the thing that kills me. This is another one of those things I was talking about the other day, where stuff that should be easily Googleable isn't. Like we should know, like what's a good way to, what's the good levels to use? Where are we supposed to be? Where are our targets at? And there's a guy on the Reaper forum. His name's Yep, I think, just YEP.
Yeah.
And one of his pet peeves is that people don't give specifics. He would like to see, when you're saying, hey, what do you do to this thing? And yes, of course it depends. Of course, no, yeah, we know, hashtag not all, whatever. It depends. Yes. But there are specifics, like there are things that you're trying to get. And it's really cool that there's a couple sites that you can go to where you can hear kind of well-recorded multi-tracks. Maybe they're not mixed yet, but you can hear what it sounds like when they're well recorded. And a lot of times you're going to say, hey, I was so critical of myself, but my stuff sounds better than this. So, it's okay. But, listen to how wide it is. Listen, the frequency response, listen to the dynamic range and stuff. And, now you can get an idea of some specifics. Specifics are important.
That was something that amazed me about getting multi-tracks from like the Cambridge multi-track library.
That's one of the places I'm thinking of. Yeah.
I have a YouTube series right now where I just go through that library and I just mix stuff while talking to people and
cool.
listen to their responses and stuff. And so far I've only done one episode because the first episode I messed up OBS so bad. I forgot to choose the streaming track as the one with both my voice and the desktop audio. And it was just the desktop audio, but it was sidechained to my voice. So when you see me talking into the mic, the desktop audio ducks, but there's nothing ducking it. It's hilarious. So that's not on my YouTube, but yeah, one of my favorite parts about that is hearing how everything is recorded. And when I was first starting out, it was an invaluable resource for me, more so than Gear Sluts, because I was able to hear what it sounded like and what people were able to get out of it and what the finished product sounded like. And I was like, oh, so that's what you can get from something that sounds like this. Maybe it's not my recording's fault that the mix sounds bad, but it's actually my fault that the mix sounds bad. Oh, that was a major light on moment for me.
Yeah, and a lot of times the way this stuff works is the second you can admit that a thing is or isn't your fault, you're well on your way to fixing it. Just lying to yourself or letting people lie to you, you're not fixing the problem. You're just hiding it and kicking it down the road.
That's why it was always my philosophy: show my mom first, feel good about myself, and then when I'm ready to admit defeat, I take it to my dad. Simple. He'll tell me everything that's wrong with it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool having that family though, for sure. That's a big leg up. But then again, then you have a lot to prove. That's the sucky part.
I know that. That's why I never stop working. Oof. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to be able to see where my downfalls were and then improve on that. And that's why stuff like, even if you don't have somebody personally close to you who knows a lot, you can always show somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And just an average listener will say, I like that or I don't like that. And that'll help you out so much when you're stuck in your own head mixing.
Yeah. I spend, anytime I'm doing that, it's going to somebody who has nothing to do with music business. That's always my check. Yeah. Because I've got mastering engineers who will always knock me back into place when it's time. but it's the, it's definitely the non-musicians that I really listen to when it comes to this stuff.
Especially because musicians typically listen for compositional things or I liked that guitar tone, that riff thing that they did. And then an average listener is going to be like, oh, that thing was a letdown. And you'll say, what thing was a letdown? And they'll say, that part, like it went from da-na-na to da-da-da-da, and it was bad. And I'm like, oh, I'm not emphasizing a thing enough in the mix, or, oh, the composition needs to be reworked or whatever. So it's really eye-opening when somebody just tells you, I don't like it.
Yeah. And then you interpret. All right. I got to let a band in a second. So that's awesome. I'm hopefully going to try and live stream some band playing tonight. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe
that'd be awesome.
Maybe I'm wiped out on that.
I heard it last time when you started doing it. And I was like, wow, those drums sound great. I can't believe this is actually a stream.
I was happy. And then the singer turned up the PA so much that I think his voice was louder than the drums, and then all of a sudden the instrument started leaking into that vocal mic, and then all of a sudden my stuff started falling apart. But
yeah, that's pretty horrifying. But if you're doing multiple person tracking at the same time, that can happen.
That's what you're asking for. So just in case anybody was under the illusion that this is not true, it's not like it is in Nickelodeon, folks, where 5 guys sit in a room, they play a thing once, and then it's a record. That's not how it works.
The sheer number of times I've pointed that out to people now, and every time I've raised my voice in concern, everybody in the room now is just like, we know it's not realistic. My girlfriend started to point it out for me, and I'm like, wow, thank you.
Yeah, there you go. So now you're having a positive impact on the universe.
Yeah, she's like, oh, that's funny. That SM58 sounds a lot like a U87. And I'm like, aw, that's adorable.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for being on this again. This is the longest one so far. So this is a pretty, I was surprised. I thought we'd need more people to make it. Hopefully you didn't bore everybody to death, but this is the life. This is what you do, man. This is what you go through. And if this isn't what you want to go through, don't do this. Like, honestly, like, you know, we make fun, but if you went to work at McDonald's, for most engineers, you would make a lot more, like, you'd have an easier life. You'd have a lot less demands on your health because you always know when you're going to be there. And, you know, so don't knock it. If this ain't for you, go work at McDonald's. There's nothing wrong with it. You do fine. You probably get benefits and stuff. School. Yeah. Well,
go to a trade school, get anything.
Maybe, you know, but you know, that's a whole nother discussion. We don't know exactly what's coming with automation. A lot of us who worked in the music industry believed that intellectual property was going to be a career for lifetimes and lifetimes, and we put in all our time and effort and money and life, and
oh no,
we have nothing for it. We lost the ability to protect intellectual property. So you never know. So 50% of the people in this country, their jobs, I think, are tied to transportation. And guaranteed that's getting automated away pretty soon. So who knows what the proper thing to do is. Don't take career advice from me. That's all I got to say. Take
career advice from me because I'm 22 and I know everything.
Hey, well, you're doing pretty good. So, I mean, could be.
No, I don't know anything about anything that's not audio or IT related. Those are my wheelhouses, and I don't leave them.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign this off when I can find the thing. It's in here someplace. And
cool.
And thanks for being on. And I swear I'm going to get to the descriptions, and I'm going to put all the links in that we need to put in. So send me the link when we're done. And
thank you.
I'm going to go. I'm going to go see if I can find some donuts before this band gets here, so I can.
Sounds good to me. It's been a fun rant time.
Yeah. Thank you for being on here. We're probably going to end up just having to make this a regular show sooner or later.
I hope so. That would be pretty fun.
All right. Well,
All right.
I'll see you later. All right. Bye.